Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Broderick and I write The Adventures of Jack and Adam. As part of Readathon Ireland and MS Ireland, I'm going to read a passage from my first book, The Adventures of Jack and Adam Wanted, and hope you enjoy it. I'm going to start off here on page 8. It's the part where the boys are planning an attack, so to speak, on their granny's kitchen. "Be careful of that barbed wire," Adam hissed as he carefully ducked under it. They had to make their way through a small patch of land where cattle grazed and often charged up and down the field. Jack flinched for a moment as he saw the bullock resting in the middle of the field, with its two cut horns and its intimidating head. Previously, Jack had had an unpleasant experience with this bullock when he was trying to fetch a ball that had landed beside it. The bullock had charged at him, and if it hadn't been for Jack's swift movement, he might have got knocked down. Adam turned back and could see the fear in his brother. "Come on, he's his back turned," shouted Adam, trying to encourage Jack to put the past behind him. Jack broke a medium-sized stick off a nearby tree and held it tightly in his fist. "If he tries to charge me this time, I'll threaten him with this," he said, smacking the stick against the barbed wire. The brothers could hear Club moaning, as she could not climb over the wall. Diamond could easily have sprung up on top of it, but chose to wait on the near side. They knew that if Club was over in Granny's garden, there was more of a chance of them being seen, so it was best to leave her behind. Base 1 was the code name given to the area behind a large rock in the middle of Granny's garden. They had named it this as it was the first and best place to eye up the window to see if Granny was in the kitchen. Once they had arrived here unseen, all they had to do was sneak in, grab from the biscuit tin, and race out behind the rock again. It sounded simple, but the plan had to be carried out with precision. Jack squeezed through the fence, then both boys sprinted over, keeping their heads down, and lay tightly behind the large boulder. Adam peered out and reached for his binoculars. He lined the sights up at the window and could see nobody in the kitchen. "These binoculars are brilliant. I can even zoom in on them," he said with a large grin in his face. "I'll stay here and keep lookout. You go and get the goods," he added. "You make sure you signal me if she comes into sight," replied Jack, realising that he had drawn the short straw this time. Jack stayed low and raced towards a small bush and then quickly up beside the door. He looked back at Adam to make sure the coast was still clear, and after getting a wave of his hand as a signal, he slowly eased the door open. Although Jack had done this about 100 times before, he still felt nervous of being caught. After all, he was the one breaking and entering, and who was to say whether Adam wouldn't leg it at any sign of trouble and deny any involvement in this act? Neither of the boys really wanted to steal from their granny. It was just the thrill of the mission that they enjoyed. After all, Granny would probably have given them the whole box of sweets and biscuits if they'd just asked her. As the door moved inwards, Jack could hear the television from the next room. It was the familiar sound of Granny's TV show, one in which she adored and watched religiously. Jack and Adam sometimes joined her as she watched Monica, the TV character, stick her nose into another problem which didn't concern her and yet again make life miserable for the bad guys. They would try and guess the culprits at the beginning before the mysterious murders took place. Granny had a good eye for the murderers. "Monica has a shrewd eye," she observed, carefully weighing up each character introduced throughout the investigation. Jack let out a sigh of relief as he knew that if the television was on, Granny was more than likely sitting down in her big comfortable chair. He composed himself for a moment and then dragged his knees along the ground until he was right under the biscuit tin. He lifted himself up and quietly opened the shiny silver lid. He was in Adam's sight at this point, and Adam began giggling nervously behind the rock. Jack could now see the range of biscuits in the container and had to decide which type to grab. There was abundance to choose from Jaffa cakes to custard creams. Jack knew he should never take the last of any biscuit packet, but choose a few from an open packet so it looked like none had been taken. As much as he wanted to grab the delicious-looking twin pack of Jaffa cakes, they were not open, so he couldn't take them. There were some custard creams and digestives lying in the tin, and they would never be missed, he thought. He filled his hands with them, and then reached for the lid to place it back on, accidentally dropping some crumbs onto the ground. He suddenly heard the volume of the TV being lowered, and knew that this meant Granny had heard something. She would either go to the toilet or the kitchen. Either way, he had to make a swift exit. He maintained his low centre of gravity and hurried to the door, which he left ajar. He pulled himself out and quietly as he could began to close the door behind him. Just as he was closing it, a digestive biscuit fell to the ground. He stopped for a second and thought about getting back for it. In the distance he could see Adam frantically making the signal over and over. Judging by the panic on Adam's face, Jack understood he had to get out of there ASAP. He lowered his back to keep out of sight from window level and ran as fast as a hare back to Adam behind the rock, leaving a trail of biscuits behind him. He dived to the ground like a soldier going to the trenches to take cover. "Did she see us?" Jack asked, panting just like Club after a chase. "What took you so long? That was a close one," cried Adam, smirking at the state of his brother was in. The biscuits in Jack's hands had now disintegrated into dust, and with the sweat running down the palms, they looked anything but appetising. Adam peered into his binoculars and focused on the kitchen again. Granny was now in there and seemed to be looking around at the biscuit tin, slightly baffled. "We'd better get back to the treehouse before she sees us here," said Adam. "As soon as she leaves the kitchen, we'll run for it," he added. The two boys got ready and soon raced down over the fence, through the patch of land, and back over the wall to their property. Club was the first one to greet Adam as he hopped down onto the uncut grass. "Get off," shouted Jack, as Club tried her best to get some of the broken biscuits in his hand. "Well, that was a bit of a disaster," sighed Adam. He and his brother made their way up the lawn and into the house, just in time for the Larry Ride hour. So that's just a passage there, and people should check out as well the MS Readathon page, and a shout out as well to Louise Power, who asked me to do this, and is a great ambassador for the cause as well. So thanks very much, have a great evening.